Imagine a world without the PlayStation. No Crash Bandicoot, no Final Fantasy VII, no God of War. It almost happened. In fact, the PlayStation was born from Betrayal, a betrayal that began as a quiet partnership and ended in one of the most dramatic power shifts the gaming industry has ever seen. This is a story of how Nintendo's broken promise gave rise to the Sony empire. In 1986, a relatively unknown Sony engineer, Ken Kutaragi, was quietly working deep inside the company's semi-coder division. At the time, Sony wasn't even in gaming, but Kutaragi saw opportunities others ignored. He designed a custom audio processor, the SPC 700, and convinced Nintendo to use it for their upcoming Super Famicom. For Sony, it was just another contract, but for Kutaragi, it was the beginning of something much larger. He wasn't just building a sound chip, he was planting Sony's flag inside of Nintendo's kingdom. Just a little side note that Ken Kutaragi was trying to get Sony to create a gaming console for the longest time, but at this point, they had shut down Ken Kutaragi and pretty much told them, we are not a video game console creator, we are not a toy company, we are a large electronic company and we don't want to venture into that. By 1988, those conversations with Nintendo had grown into something far more ambitious. Compact discs were transforming the music industry, and Sony believed that same clarity and storage could revolutionize gaming. The plan was simple: a CD-ROM add-on for the Super Famicom, encyclopedias, karaoke tracks, massive new games, but soon the idea evolved. In 1989, the project gained a name: PlayStation. 2 words. A hybrid machine that could run Nintendo's cartridge and Sony's own Super Disc. Sony saw it as more than a console. It was their chance to re-enter the home computing market they had failed to conquer before. In 1990, Sony had a working prototype, sleek, compact, a front-loading disc tray, and one crucial feature. Sony, not Nintendo, would control the licensing of the Super Disc game. For Sony, it was the deal of a lifetime. For Nintendo, it was a red flag. In June of 1991, the Consumer Electronics Show became the stage for one of gaming's greatest betrayals. Sony proudly unveiled the PlayStation, a revolutionizing new hybrid machine, but the very next day, Nintendo dropped the bombshell. On stage, Nintendo announced a shocking new partnership, not with Sony, but with Philips. Sony executives in the audience were stunned. Their deal had been ripped out from under them. Years of work erased in a single announcement. In a moment, Nintendo had humiliated Sony in front of the entire world. But this betrayal would not end the story, it would ignite it. Back in Tokyo, Sony had an emergency meeting. Some executives demanded lawsuits, others wanted to abandon gaming entirely. But Ken Kutaragi had a different idea. He told them, don't sue, build. Rather than walk away, Sony would rise from the ashes. In 1992, the board approved Kutaragi's plan for a brand new console. Not a Nintendo accessory, not a multimedia gimmick, a machine built from the ground up to be the most powerful gaming system on Earth. The project codename, PSX, would rewrite the rules instead of relying on standard chips. Kutaragi's team built custom processors. One chip handled texture mapping, another handled geometry, another input and output. By splitting the workload, Sony achieved something that no other console had done before: true real-time 3D graphics. Their goal wasn't to match arcade machines, it was to outperform them. Shuhei and also Kutaragi recount that they were egging on Sony executives because if there's one thing that Japanese corporations hate, is being stabbed in the back by Japanese corporations. And so Kutaragi and Yoshida were kind of egging them on and be like, you can't let them get away with this, you can't let them do this to you. And of course, with the magical 2 words that they do to approve it was do it. And that's how PlayStation was essentially born. In 1993, Sony officially revived the name PlayStation, but Sony faced a problem. Unlike Sega or Nintendo, they had no game catalog, no mascots, no in-house studios, success would depend entirely on winning over third-party developers. So Kutaragi and his teams went on the road. Studio by studio, company by company, they showed off the hardware. They walked developers through the architecture, and they made a promise. PlayStation would be more powerful, more flexible, and more affordable than anything else on the market. The developers were impressed but skeptical. Could Sony sell enough consoles to make it worth their while? Kutaraga's answer was simple: price. At the time Panasonic's 3DO was failing at $700, Sony announced the PlayStation would launch at $299. The gamble was bold, the gamble was dangerous, but it worked. In December 1994, the PlayStation launched in Japan. It didn't just succeed, it conquered. Final Fantasy, Resident Evil, Metal Gear Solid, Tomb Raider, Crash Bandicoot, game after game, developer after developer rushed to Sony's side. Nintendo had betrayed Sony to protect its empire, but in doing so, it had created a rival that would eclipse it. The original plan was to build a disk drive. Instead, Sony built an empire. One broken handshake reshaped decades of gaming history. What if Nintendo hadn't betrayed Sony? Would the PlayStation still exist? We may never know, but one thing is certain: betrayal has rarely led to such glory. Let me know what you think of the video. As say, did you like this? Also, if you want to support, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comment section. And remember, you're pretty good.